Welcome to Negative Splits, the only running podcast that asks the hard questions, with your host, Doug Miles. Brought to you by the Lapeer Run Club, with generous support from the Doug Miles Fan Club and viewers like you.
So on last week's episode, I spoke about the Boston Marathon. I realized as I edited the video that what I was saying could rub some folks the wrong way. I know many people who have run Boston, but I know a lot more who never have and likely never will run it. The way I had framed the topic could feel like a dismissal of the abilities of those runners. It may have sounded like, if you can't qualify for Boston, then you're wasting your time. That wasn't my intent, so I need to reframe my message. Let me start by telling you my story. Sit, sit, sit. Are you sitting? Are you comfortable? Good, good. Once upon a time, there was a handsome prince. Okay, seriously. When I was younger, I was never athletic. I was overweight. I didn't like exercise. I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I was a nerd, okay? So when someone gave me a Fitbit, I never expected to become a runner. I just discovered that I liked those numbers. I liked competition. I liked trying to get to a step count that my friend couldn't reach. It just triggered something in my brain. But I found myself walking around my subdivision at night to get to my step goal. And I wondered, could I do this quicker if I ran? So I started a Couch to 5K app. And I started walking, really. But it was gradual. I wasn't Forrest Gump. I didn't suddenly, take off running and keep on running. I'd never done a race before, so I signed up for a 5K. And I felt like I was really jumping the gun. I had never run like even 2 miles before without, walking. So I figured I was going to be a slow runner. And I put myself at the back of the corral with the moms, with the strollers, and the race started, and I started running, and the first thing I realized was, man, these people are slow. I was really impatient, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction to pass people. It was really fun, and I would, actually kind of channel some negativity. I would get annoyed with the people ahead of me, and I would kind of think unkind thoughts about them until I caught up to them and passed them, and then I would focus on the next person ahead. And before I knew it, I finished the race. I never had to walk, and it was just a real feeling of elation, a feeling of accomplishment. The irony was that people didn't know they were competing against me, right? I was trying to beat people who had no idea that they were in a competitive race against me. But my confidence began to grow. I was able to complete 5Ks, so I moved up to 10Ks. I stumbled through some 10Ks, had to take some walk breaks, but eventually I was running 10Ks. And then I moved up to a 20K. I did the Volksloft 20K, and I finished that, and I felt incredible. I thought, I'm going to take on a marathon. But my confidence had exceeded my ability at that point. And I did the Kensington Marathon in 2016, and I broke myself. I went out there and thought I was immortal. I was just going to run forever and keep on getting faster. And mile 20, I broke hard. My knee felt like the cartilage was gone, and it was just bone on bone grinding. Every time my foot hit the ground, the pain shot up my leg, up my side, and into my shoulder and my back. And it was just agony. I walked it in 6 miles, hating myself, hating running. So I limped across the finish line in just over 4 hours and swore I'd never do it again. And it took me a long time to recover from that. A lot of false starts, but eventually I did heal. Now, at this point, I was just running by myself. I had no relationship with anybody else who ran. I just showed up, I ran the race, I got my medal, I got my banana, and I went home. And I thought that was fine. right? I eventually came around and recovered and went out and did another marathon. I think I finished the Martian Marathon in 2017 in around 3:42, which is really, anybody would be happy with that time, right? 3:42, not bad at all. But I wanted more. After about 2 years of running by myself, I took a chance and I went to a group run. It was the Bastille Day training runs. And that's when I discovered the running community. It was like the best decision I ever made. It opened up so many doors, and I've benefited from friendships ever since. Group runs led to actual training. There was so much experience and wisdom that I was able to glean from these people, and I had friendships and camaraderie that I never had before. I met some runners who could leave me in the dust, and I badly wanted their respect. Let me tell you about one of them. So his name is Andrew Benke, and he is close to me in age, but he's a much faster runner than I am. And the thing about Andrew is that he is a very encouraging, supportive person, and he has got a lot of confidence, and he will talk to you and boost you up and get you really motivated and believing in yourself. And he's just an incredible guy to be around and just to absorb wisdom from. So in 2019, I caught a ride with Andrew to the Charlevoix Marathon. And on the way up there, we talked about our strategies for running marathons. And my strategy had always been to run as fast and as hard as I could and just try to bank time for the inevitable breakdown that happened at the end, right? And just hope that I could, get across that finish line with some speed left. But Andrew, he had a different approach, and he kind of pitched it to me in the car, and I was, well, it's worth a shot. So his idea was run the first half of the marathon at a more modest, manageable pace, okay? And then if you're really feeling good at the halfway mark, which for Charlevoix, it's an out and back, so the halfway mark's easy to remember, then you can go for it. Then you can try to get that negative split, right? That faster second half than the first half. So I ran the whole thing, the whole first half with Andrew. And I'm coming up on the halfway mark, and we do the turnaround, and Andrew's like, "How you feeling?" And I'm like, "I feel pretty good." And he says, "Well, go for it." And I'm like, I wasn't thinking like that good, but now I'm kind of on the spot, right? So I just went for it. Andrew, he was coming back from an injury, so he wasn't 100% yet. And this is probably one of the only opportunities I would have to beat Andrew in a race, because he was still kind of fighting that injury. So I took off, and I still broke down, but I was able to, get back going again. And, after a couple walk breaks, and I finished in 3 hours and 19 minutes. It was a personal best for me. And more importantly, I wasn't injured when I was finished. I felt great across that finish line. And it wasn't until later, driving home in the car, that I realized that a 3:19 for my age was a Boston qualifying time. Now, I had never even thought about Boston. Boston was something for the elite runners, right? The really fast, experienced, incredible people. I never saw myself like that until that moment, right? And it was Andrew who made me believe in myself and got me to that amazing point in my life. And really, from that point onwards, I was a different runner. It was the power of belief, of encouragement, of positive thinking that got me across the finish line at Charlevoix. I never told Andrew what he had done for me. I never thanked him. So I'd like to take a moment right now and say to Andrew Benke, thank you for believing in me. thank you for helping me believe in myself. I wouldn't be who I am today without your support and encouragement. Thanks, man. I applied for Boston in September and got the news back that I didn't make the cut. It was 3:20 was the Boston qualifying time. I was 3:19 and something, and basically I was off by like 20 seconds. But it wasn't a big setback. I wasn't phased. Boston hadn't been my goal when I ran that race, so it wasn't a big disappointment for me. But then I started training. I jumped on the Hanson's method and I started running more miles a week than I'd ever run before. I was doing the intervals and the tempo runs and the long runs 6 days a week, running on tired legs. It was a bear. I was, looking forward to finally being done and running the stupid race. I signed up for Glass City in 2020. I was like a sharpened knife ready to cut prime rib. Then it happened. You remember, you were there too. On March 10th, 2020, the first case of coronavirus hit Michigan. 3 days later, our schools went remote. 3 days after that, the bars closed and the restaurants. It was lockdown. All in-person racing was canceled. Glass City was canceled. The Boston Marathon was canceled. Those are some dark days. At times, I wondered if things would ever go back to normal. The weekend after Glass City was canceled, I ran a 3:14 marathon in my subdivision. I never broke down or needed a walk break. I was angry at the world. Things got better though. There were some very determined pandemic race directors like Eddie Klein. I believe that only 2 in-person marathons happened in Michigan in 2020, and Holland Haven was one of them. Eddie's a downright hero. I didn't do so well, the wheels fell off, I finished with a 3:23, but every time I failed, I also learned a lesson. I think that's often overlooked. Sometimes only through failure can we find the way forward. I got my second BQ time at Glass City the next year, and coincidentally, Andrew was there for that one too. I ran Boston in 2022. I requalified at Holland Haven in 2022. I went back to Boston in 2023, and I ran fast enough at Boston to qualify for Boston 2024. But I didn't go because I figured it was someone else's turn. I guess this is my point. Everyone is different. Not everyone wants to go to Boston. Not everyone likes road running. Not everyone is driven to run fast. There's a lot of fellowship in running. It is immensely healthy, both physically and mentally. It's hard to be sad when you're running. It's also incredibly rewarding to push yourself past the point where you think you have to break, and you find there's more inside of you than you expected. I really believe if you decide you want to get to Boston, you can do it. But if that's not what inspires you, you're still okay in my book. Just don't hold yourself back because you're afraid to fail. You're going to fail. You're going to bonk. You're going to get injured. You're going to have doubts. You're on a journey. You're discovering what you're made of. You're discovering who your friends really are. If you keep trying, keep pushing, keep failing, keep reflecting, keep believing, keep persisting, one of those times you are going to snatch those juicy, ripe grapes off the highest vine. Believe me.